Hello! Wow, videos on this channel actually existing? That's a new one. You might be wondering why there wasn't anything for 2 months. Well, first off, I was kind of busy graduating from college and doing some other stuff. And it was also burnout because during this pandemic, my ability to actually do work has decreased drastically, and one scripted video a month is apparently too much. And then I also started playing the free trial of critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, which includes the award-winning Heavensward expansion and allows you to play for free up to level 60, except I didn't stop at level 60. I actually bought the game and went all the way to 80. On 3 different jobs. Yes, my character's name is an obscure Xeno reference. I named my chocobo Horsefinch because of course I did, and I started playing Dragoon because it felt the most like a Xenoblade DPS, haha, Stardiver go burr. Anyway, I will be making videos again, but I don't know when the next scripted video will be, because I'm currently working on gathering footage and editing for an hour and 15-minute long guide to getting into the Trail series, which despite being one connected timeline, is significantly more difficult to get into than Xeno, apparently. So that's a thing, but I'm going to work on getting my entire backlog, aka the list of videos that I'd like to make, done before I add anything new to the list besides new stuff like this one. So there are a few unscripted things I can do there that I'm probably going to put out during and after working on the Trails video. Is this video clickbait? Perhaps. But I would like you to view this as new Xenoblade game in development clickbait video definitive edition that will not be out of date at all until they actually reveal whatever the next game is. So if you see some baseless rumor or some random leak about how, oh, a new Xenoblade game might be in development, just link to this, because I have explicit proof that a new Xenoblade game has been in development for several years, and this proof itself has existed for over 1 year by now. This was spurred on by an article I saw a couple days ago, where Jenna Coleman recently did an interview that was recorded, and this is apparently the first time on record she's been asked about Melia, and she said she didn't play Xenoblade 1, asked if it was a good game. Yes, it is. Maybe she should try streaming it. Sky Bennett saw a lot of success when she streamed Xenoblade 2, and then said, I think they're making a new one, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about that. And of course the article was like, did Jenna Coleman just leak Xenoblade 3 being in development? And, well, the article was obvious clickbait and taking an offhand comment by a voice actor who doesn't know when they start development on a project as a leak, in massive air quotes. It kind of was that meme where it's like, you did all the wrong steps, but you got the right answer, because I have explicit proof that a new Xenoblade game is in development, and probably has been for several years, with the proof itself being over a year old. So we don't need fake leaks or random rumors. We already know that a game is coming, and it probably would have been revealed by now had COVID not happened. Now, I'm just going to be talking about a new Xenoblade project and not any other game Monolith Soft is working on. I need exactly 2 pieces of news that are both developer interviews, both of which will be linked in the description of this video, and just between those 2, the most recent of which came from May 2020, so significantly over a year ago, is enough to prove that either the executive director of the Xenoblade series is lying to fans, or a new Xenoblade game has been in development since 2018. Now, before I touch those articles, the one thing that needs to be said is, of course they're making a new Xenoblade game! This series has been getting more successful recently! Xenoblade 2 sold over 2 million copies, a lot for a niche JRPG and way more than the developers were expecting. Xenoblade Definitive Edition sold more copies than the original version of the game 10 years ago. No shit, they're gonna capitalize on it and try to make a new one to get more money. This is Nintendo we're talking about. You don't need a leak or a rumor to say successful game series is going to get new entry. However, you may want more explicit proof, so here we go. The first article is a May or June 2019 interview, which was conducted with Xeno series director Tetsuya Takahashi and Bandai Namco all-around important guy Katsuhiro Harada of Tekken fame, among other things, and they talked about a bunch of different things, their different development philosophies, their history together because Monolith Soft used to be owned by Namco, but the important thing to bring up is one statement from Takahashi, which said, Monolith Soft has sent Nintendo 10+ business proposals for approval over the years, but the only one that has been approved recently was Xenoblade. Coming directly from Takahashi's mouth. This was in 2019, so you might be thinking, that was just Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, a 2020 game. That is a very fair thing to think, but I'll show you that it's a bit more nuanced in a minute. I do want to shout out xenomira.wordpress.com. You've heard about this blog before if you've been watching my other news videos, because Lugal Banda, the person who owns the blog, does translations of a bunch of different exclusive Japanese Xeno interviews and other media, and there's a lot of important stuff that's been incredibly useful to a lot of my videos, so while I'm only linking this specific article, just check out the entire site if you want to go look at it. The second article is also a Japanese-only Tetsuya Takahashi interview, this time from May of 2020, and this one was translated by Nintendo Everything. The important thing here is one specific question asked to Takahashi. When did the plans come about for Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition? Takahashi's response. Planning began sometime at the end of 2017. I recall it being pretty much right after the release of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which released December 1st. That's when Torna the Golden Country was in development, so we worked on both at the same time. We put together the proposal for Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, along with the new game that our first production team is currently working on, and presented them sometime in May of 2018. We formally began work in August after post-production on Torna wrapped up. That means, for a brief period of time, we were actually working on 3 different projects simultaneously: Torna the Golden Country, Definitive Edition, New Project, and had to organize our first production members between the 3 titles. If you ask me, it doesn't get a whole lot more obvious than that. In 2019, Takahashi said Xenoblade was the only thing that had been approved by Nintendo recently, and in 2020, he said that in 2018, 2 different first production team projects were submitted, and since one of them was Xenoblade Definitive Edition, and the other one he said first production team is working on, they must have been approved by Nintendo. So obviously, unless he was straight up lying in the first interview, this thing is another Xenoblade game. For additional expansion on the information, Production Team 1 is the team Takahashi himself heads. It's the team that has made Xenoblade games, and only Xenoblade games, for the past decade. Monolith has been hiring a ton, sure, but most of those hires were going for other teams working on other projects, including a dedicated Legend of Zelda team, so development on Breath of the Wild 2 didn't steal developers from whatever Production Team 1 was going on, like what happened with Breath of the Wild 1 and Xenoblade 2. They're making another Xenoblade game right now. It started development in 2018. It's only a matter of time before we see it. I was honestly kind of expecting a reveal at this year's E3, but given that it's Nintendo, anything that was impacted significantly by COVID has to be pushed back by basically an entire year. That's how I'm viewing Nintendo projects that are being worked on right now still. So, Xenoblade 2, we know, based on when Xenoblade X came out, took about 2.5 years from previous release to its release, because X came out in April 2015 in Japan, and 2 came out December 2017 worldwide. Then we know from these 2 interviews alone that Definitive Edition took roughly 2 years to come out. So 2.5 to 3 years, somewhere in that ballpark range, from mid-2018, adding a year for COVID, we've probably got a reveal either this year or E3 2022. So the next time you see an article, a 4chan post, or a Twitter thread about potential rumors or leaks about a new Xenoblade game being in development, you should see those and say, well, these are pointless and mostly just clickbait, because we've known since 2020 that Monolith has been working on a new Xenoblade game since 2018. That's all I got for this time. See you next time. Until then, this is Luxon, signing off.